What's going on, guys? Super Insane 18 here, and if you saw my last video, you know that I cracked out my favorite deck of all time, Mermail, to have a little bit of fun to end and start the year, and that actually sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole because I realized just how good Mermails can actually be in this format. So I've spent the last couple of days testing, and that's why today I am bringing you 6 must-know Mermail combos for the January 2023 format. Alright, so for combo number 1, we're going to show you how good just a single Deep Sea Diva can be. Now, Deep Sea Diva actually saw some competitive play recently because of Sprite, and it's no different here. We are going to use a couple of the Sprite extra deck cards to extend our combo, but the addition of the Mermails and the Atlanteans just kind of elevate the ceiling to a whole nother level, because not only are we going to be able to end on a totally awesome that's protected, but we can also end on an Abyss Dweller while ripping cards out of our opponent's hand. So let's show you guys how it's done. We're going to go ahead and normal summon out our Deep Sea Diva, which will activate summoning a copy of Neptibus the Atlantean Prince from our deck. We can use the Neptibus effect to send a Atlantean, so we're going to go ahead and send our Dragoons to the graveyard, and this lets us add any Atlantean, so we're going to go ahead and add another copy of Dragoons. Now, because Dragoons was sent, we can add any Sea Serpent, so this is going to let us add Mullen Glacier from our deck to our hand. Now, this card you might be thinking you don't want to use because it rips card out of your opponent's hands, and we are in a Tearlament format, but don't worry because we are going to be using an Abyss Dweller before actually resolving the Mullen Glacier, which is what makes this combo so good. So we're going to go ahead and take the Diva and the Neptibus because Diva is a level 2. We can go ahead and link into our copy of Sprite Sprint. Now, Sprite Sprint will activate, sending our copy of Angler from the deck to the graveyard, and then we can go ahead and use Angler to summon 2 Nimble Beavers. Now, this is where the combo gets really cool. We currently have 4 water monsters in our graveyard, and when we link away, it's going to put 6 in the graveyard, meaning we'll have missed the availability for the Mullen Glacier, but we're going to link the 2 beavers into the Boojin link, because what the Boojin link does is it summons 2 monsters with the same level, one from hand and one from grave. So we're going to go ahead and summon out one of the Dragoons from our hand, and the other Dragoon from our graveyard, and that puts 5 in our graveyard. Don't forget we have to overlay these immediately because of the Boojin Link's effect, so we're going to go ahead and overlay those into a copy of Abyss Dweller. Now what we can do is, because there are 5 in the graveyard, we can summon out the Mullen Glacier and activate its effect to rip 2 cards out of our opponent's hand, but we're going to want to chain the Dweller just in case our opponent is playing Tearlament. So now we rip 2 out and we have Dweller live, but we can also activate the Atlantean Dragoons because it was sent to the graveyard to activate a Water Monster's effect, which will allow us to search for any Sea Serpent. Here we're going to go ahead and search for the Lapis Dragon, which will then special summon itself because it special summons itself whenever it's added from deck to hand. Now we can take our Sprite Sprint and our Boojin Link, and we're going to go ahead and overlay those into a copy of Gigantic Sprite. Now, Gigantic Sprite will be able to use its effect to go ahead and detach 1 material and summon out our Swap Frog from our graveyard. Swap Frog can activate its effect to Foolish Burial another Swap Frog, and now we have the full setup because we can take the Gigantic Sprite and our Lapis Dragon, and we're going to go ahead and link those into a copy of Sprite Elf. Sprite Elf pointing to these 2 zones to make sure we protect our Dweller and our Toad, because we're going to use the Sprite Elf effect to resummon out the Swap Frog that we sent to the graveyard. Here you can go ahead and send the other swap if you want, but you don't need to. We are playing just 3 Swap Frogs, but we'll overlay both of them into a copy of Totally Awesome. And now we've ended our board with an untargetable Abyss Dweller, meaning that we turn off our opponent's grave on their turn as well, plus we get a search off the Atlantean Dragoons. We have Totally Awesome twice because we'll be able to reborn it off of the Elf, and each time you use the Toad, you can add a water monster back from your graveyard, meaning that you get to add any of these advantage pieces back twice. And yeah, we ripped 2 cards out of our opponent's hand, so they're playing down 2 cards, and I just think that's an incredible 1-card Diva combo. Let's go ahead and show you guys the second one. Okay, so combo number 2 is going to be near identical to combo number 1. It does start with just a Deep Sea Diva, but this is a little bit more of an explosive combo that you can do if you are not up against something like Tearlament. So this is going to end on a stronger board for something that isn't Tear, because we're not going to make Dweller, we're actually going to go a different route. Let's show you guys what it is. We're going to go ahead and normal summon our Deep Sea Diva like we did last time, and it's going to be exactly the same. We're going to go ahead and summon the Neptibus. Neptibus is going to send Dragoons to add Dragoons, and then the Dragoons that we sent is going to go ahead and add us our Mullen Glacier. We're going to use the Diva and the Neptibus, and this is going to summon out our copy of Sprite Sprint, which will activate sending our Angler to the graveyard, and Angler will be able to summon double Beaver. Now, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to go ahead and use both beavers to make the Boojin Link, and this is going to summon a Dragoon from our hand and a Dragoon from our grave, and this is going to immediately allow us to overlay into a copy of Bahamut Shark. Now, before we use the Bahamut Shark, we do have to summon our Glacia because we are at 5. This is why this is the combo for when you are not up against Tearlament, because obviously you don't want to rip cards without the graveyard being turned off. So we're going to go ahead and summon out our Glacia and rip 2 cards out of our opponent's hand. Then we can go ahead and use the Bahamut Shark, detaching a Dragoons to summon out a copy of Totally Awesome. Now, the Dragoons will activate again because it was still detached to activate the effect of a Water Monster, and this time you can add any Sea Serpent you want. It doesn't have to be the Lapis Dragon. Now, I'm just showing you the infantry for example, but you can do a Neptibus, you can do a Megalo. Remember, you have 4 other cards in your hand, so whatever Sea Serpent is best suited for those other 4 cards. But now we can finish the combo in the same way as before. We're going to use the Sprind and the Boojin Link to make our copy of Gigantic. Gigantic is going to go ahead and use its effect to summon out a copy of Swap Frog. Swap Frog is going to send a Swap Frog to the graveyard. And then because we don't have the Dweller, we have the Bahamut, we can go ahead and link the Bahamut and the Gigantic into our copy of Elf. This is why you don't need the Sprite or the Lapis Dragon, because you already have an extra body you're willing to get rid of. And then Sprite Elf is going to go ahead and allow us to summon back out our Swap Frog. And Swap Frog is going to go ahead and overlay into our copy of Toad. So now we have 2 untargetable Totally Awesomes, a Search Sea Serpent, so we still have 5 cards in our hand, which is absolutely crazy, and this is going to add us back 2 more, meaning that we have everything we need for the crackback. 3 Omni Negates, your opponent probably can't play through that after you rip 2 cards, so that just goes to show how strong a single Diva can be. For combo number 3, we are getting into the 2-card combos. This one is going to be Diva and Infantry. Now, Infantry is actually interchangeable with Neptibus, and I'll explain why when we're going through the combo, but this is going to allow us to extend the board even further. So first, I'm going to show you the version that you're going to want to play against Tearlaments. We're going to go ahead and we're going to normal summon out our Heavy Infantry, and the reason this is important is because Infantry lets us normal summon another level 4 or lower Sea Serpent this turn. So we can go ahead and normal summon out our Deep Sea Diva, which will go ahead and summon our Neptibus. Now, this is why it's interchangeable, because if you open the Neptibus instead, you start with normal summoning the Diva, and Diva will special the Infantry instead, allowing us to get the additional normal of our Neptibus. So now we can use the Neptibus, which is going to send the Dragoon to add the Dragoon, same thing that we did for the last 2 combos, and the Dragoon that we sent is going to add us a Glacia. Now, we're going to take the Infantry and the Neptibus this time, and this is what's going to go into our Sprite Sprind, and then now the combo is relatively the same. We're going to go ahead and use the Sprite Sprind to send our Nimble Angler. Nimble Angler is going to summon our 2 Beavers, and both Beavers are going to go ahead and make us our Boojin Link. The Boojin Link is going to summon both Dragoons from our graveyard and immediately overlay them into an Abyss Dweller, and now we are back at the point where we have 5 in our graveyard, meaning that we can go ahead and use the Glacia. We're going to summon out the Glacia, activate its effect as Chainlink 1 to rip 2 cards, and then we're going to use the Abyss Dweller to detach the Dragoon, and this is going to go ahead and make sure that the 2 cards we rip cannot activate their graveyard effects, and now we can use the Dragoons that we detached to add us our Lapis Dragon. Lapis Dragon is going to special summon itself because it was added, and here we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to take the Deep Sea Diva and our Glacia, a level 2 tuner and a level 8 monster, and this is going to go ahead and summon out a copy of Baron de Fleur. So now we have an Omni Negate as well. We're going to go ahead and use the Sprind and the Ahashima. This is going to go into our copy of Gigantic Sprite, and then the Gigantic Sprite will be able to detach 1 to summon out a copy of Swap Frog. Swap Frog is going to send another Swap Frog, and then we're going to finish it off the same way we always do. We're going to take the Sprite and the Lapis Dragon. This is going to go ahead and summon out a Elf. So here you actually have the choice of what you want to make untargetable. I usually do the Dweller because I feel like the Dweller is a little bit more important, but you can make the Baron untargetable as well. So we're going to go ahead and summon the Sprite Elf pointing to these 2 zones. We're going to use its effect to reborn out our Swap Frog, and then we can overlay both of our swaps into a copy of Totally Awesome. So now with just an additional card, we made the same end board we did before, ripping 2 cards out of our opponent's hand, making sure that the graveyard was turned off, but we have an additional Omni Negate in the Baron de Flor, so you end your board with your opponent not having graveyard effects. You'll get a search off of the Dragoons when you detach it. You'll get to add back 2 cards off the Toad, plus the 2 Omni Negates that it's going to get because you can reborn it with the Elf, and you have a 3rd Omni Negate in the Baron de Flor, all while these 2 are entirely untargetable. And at this point, you can probably guess what combo number 4 is going to be, since combo number 3 mirrored combo number 1 plus a Baron. It's going to be the exact same for 4. 4 is going to mirror 2 plus a Baron, so let's show you guys how you do it. If you can't figure it out already, we're going to go ahead and normal summon out the infantry and use the additional normal summon to summon out our Diva. Diva will activate summoning out our copy of Neptibus, and then we can use the Neptibus to send the Dragoons and add the Dragoons. The Dragoons that we sent is going to activate, adding us our copy of Mullen Glacia, and we're going to take the infantry and the Neptibus, and this is going to let us make our Sprite Sprind. Sprite Sprind is going to send our Nimble Beaver and summon out, or our Nimble Angler and summon out both of our Nimble Beavers. We've seen this 3 other times before, so nothing's really changing. We're going to go ahead and use both of the Beavers. This is going to go into our Boojin Link, and the Boojin Link is going to summon a Dragoon from our grave and a Dragoon from our hand, and this time, instead of the Abyss Dweller, we're going to immediately overlay them into the copy of Bahamut Shark. So again, we want to make sure that this is for not Tearlament, but now we have 5 waters in our graveyard, meaning that we can use the Mullen Glacia to go ahead and summon itself and rip 2 cards out of our opponent's hand. Now we're going to go ahead and use the Bahamut Shark. This is going to summon out a copy of Totally Awesome, and then we get our Dragoons, and this time instead of the Lapis Dragon, we can search for any Sea Serpent. Again, infantry for the example, but you have 3 other cards in your hand, so you got to kind of make that judgment call of what Sea Serpent works the best here. But now we can take the Abyss Dweller, or not the Abyss Dweller, the Deep Sea Diva and the Mullen Glacia, and we're going to go ahead and synchro those into a copy of Baron de Flor. So we're already at 2 Omni Negates, but we can go even further because we're going to take the Sprind and the Ahashima, and this is going to overlay into our copy of Gigantic Sprite. We'll then use the Gigantic Sprite effect to go ahead and detach and summon out a copy of Swap Frog. Swap Frog is going to send Swap Frog, and now we can use the Gigantic Sprite and the Bahamut Shark, and this is going to go into our Elf, and then again you can choose what you want the Elf to protect, but the Elf is going to go ahead and reborn our copy of Swap Frog, allowing us to make a 2nd Totally Awesome. So now we're ending our board with 4 Omni Negates, because we're going to be able to reborn one of the Toads, so that's 1, 2, 3 Toads, plus a Baron de Flor, and then we're going to be able to add back 3 water monsters on top of the 4 cards we already still have in our hand, meaning that we have guaranteed follow-up for the Crackback, and I think that's just insane that 2 cards can give you 4 Omni Negates plus guaranteed recursion. Combo number 5 is going to start very familiar if you know anything about Mermail and the legendary Teus Dragoon opening, and this is actually going to get us a very similar board to the last 4 combos, but we do get to showcase the Mermail Link and the power that that can have at the end of this as well. So let's show you guys what we're gonna do. So we're gonna start by using the Mermail Abyss Teus. This is going to summon itself by discarding a water monster, and now we can activate both of these in whatever order we want since they're both mandatory. We get to add any Sea Serpent, we get to add a level 4 or lower Mermail. So the Teus is gonna go ahead and add the Gund, and the Dragoon is going to go ahead and add the Diva. Now we can go ahead and normal summon out our Deep Sea Diva, and this is going to summon out our Neptibus. The Neptibus is then going to send a Dragoons to add a Dragoons, and the Dragoons that we sent is going to add us a Mullen Glacia, because obviously it's not once per turn. Now we can take the Diva and the Teus, and this is going to go ahead and link into our copy of Sprite Sprind. Sprite Sprind will then activate, sending our copy of Nimble Angler, and we'll be able to summon out both of our Beavers. Now, here we are at 5, so we have to summon the Mullen Glacia right now, which shouldn't really be a problem, but we're going to go ahead and summon that and rip 2 out. This is a little risky against Tearlament, but I mean, it is what it is. We're not going to be able to do it after this point, so we're going to go ahead and take both of our Beavers, and this is going to summon out the Boojin Link again. So as we've always done, we're going to go ahead and use the Boojin Link to summon the Dragoons from our hand and a Dragoons from our graveyard, and here we're going to immediately overlay them into a copy of Bahamut Shark, and the Bahamut Shark can then use its effect to go ahead and summon out our copy of Totally Awesome. Here the Dragoons will activate, letting us add any Sea Serpent, so we're actually going to go ahead and add Megalo. Now, it doesn't have to be Megalo, but I like doing Megalo here because it lets you get follow-up on the next turn, plus it's just an insane card. But now we're able to continue with the plays that we normally do. We're going to go ahead and overlay the Boojin and the Sprite Sprind, into our copy of Gigantic Sprite, and we're going to activate the Gigantic Sprite effect to go ahead and summon out our Swap Frog. Swap Frog is going to send our Swap Frog to the graveyard, and then here what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use the Gigantic Sprite and the Neptibus. Or actually, no, don't use the Neptibus. We'll use the Bahamut Shark, and we're going to go ahead and overlay those into a Sprite Elf. Now, Sprite Elf is going to reborn out our copy of Swap Frog from our graveyard, and here we're going to make a second Totally Awesome, but we're not going to make it in the zone that Elf points to, because we need an open zone for the Mermail link, because now we can take the Neptibus and the Mullen Glacia, and this is going to go ahead and summon out the copy of Mermail Abyssalacia, and now we have kind of a cool setup, because we have 3 Omni Negates, one of which is untargetable. The Elf will be able to reborn the Toad because it was properly summoned, and when the Totally Awesome gets sent to the graveyard and you add back your water, what you're going to do specifically is you're actually going to add back the Dragoons, because what the Dragoons is going to do for you is you can activate the effect of the Abyssalacia on your opponent's turn, send the Dragoons as cost, meaning that you'll be able to search a Mermail off of the Abyssalacia, and you're going to be able to search any Sea Serpent off of the Dragoons. So now you have the 3 cards that were left in your hand from your start, plus the 2 you searched, which is a hand of 5, plus you're searching 2 more off of the Alacia and the Dragoons, so you're going to have 7 cards in your hand starting the next turn, plus your opponent had to play through 3 Omni Negates, and you rip 2 cards out of their hand, so that sounds like a good game to me. And for the 6th and final combo, since we are still in a Tier 0 Tearlament format, I would be damned if I didn't show you a combo specifically to just end Tear's existence, and this is a 3-card combo, and it doesn't end on as explosive as a board, but it does do something really cool to start your turn, and I'm going to show you guys what that is. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to activate the effect of Minstrel, which what Deep Sea Minstrel does is you discard itself and a water monster to look at your opponent's hand and banish a card until the end of the turn. So the reason this is really important against Tear is because you can look at their hand, and if they have a copy of Havness, you can go ahead and get the Havness banished for the turn, just to make sure that they're not able to play on your turn, because as long as they can't play on your turn, you're going to ensure that they can't play on their turn as well. So now we can go ahead and use the effect of the Nimble Angler, since it was sent from the hand. This is going to summon out 2 copies of Nimble Beaver. Next, we're going to start by normal summoning out the Deep Sea Diva, which will summon out our copy of Neptibus, and we can do our Neptibus shenanigans. Neptibus is going to go ahead and send the Dragoon and add our Dragoon, and then the Dragoon that we sent is going to add us a copy of Mullen Glacia. Here we're going to use both of our beavers, and we're going to start with the Boojin Link because we don't need Sprint in this scenario. So the Boojin Link is going to go ahead and summon out 1 of your Atlantean Dragoons from your hand and 1 Atlantean Dragoons from your graveyard, and this is going to go ahead and let you make your copy of Abyss Dweller. Now, we only have 4 in the grave, but if we are against Tear, the good thing is we're going to want to activate Dweller first. So we're going to use the Abyss Dweller to turn off the grave, which not only puts the 5th water in our graveyard, but also lets us get a search off Dragoons. Here we're going to search any Sea Serpent. Again, it's the infantry for the example, but it can be whatever you want, because you still have 2 cards that you started with, so just use your best judgment. But now that we have 5 waters in our graveyard, we're going to go ahead and summon out the Mullen Glacia. And now we're going to rip 2 cards out of our opponent's hand, plus they're Underdweller, so those 2 cards will do absolutely nothing for them. Here we're going to use the Ahashima and the Diva, and these are going to become our Gigantic Sprite, and the Gigantic Sprite is going to use its effect to summon out a copy of Swap Frog. Swap Frog is going to send the Swap Frog from the deck to the grave, and then we're going to use the Atlantean Neptibus and the Gigantic Sprite into our copy of Sprite Elf, making sure to protect the Dweller and our inevitable Toad. We're going to use the Elf to reborn our Swap Frog, and we're going to go ahead and overlay both of those into our copy of Totally Awesome, and that is going to be the combo. Now, it's not as impressive as a board for 3 cards, considering you saw us make better boards off 2 cards, but that being said, we made sure that they couldn't use Havness on our turn. We turned off their graveyard and ripped 2 cards out of their hand, so we technically ripped 3, although they do get the Havness back. We're going to have 2 Omni Negates plus 2 Water Recursions, plus Abyss Dweller and the search that we get when we detach the Dragoon. So that is going to absolutely ensure that if you are against Tearlaments, you win the game, and there you guys have it. Well, that is going to be 6 must-know Mermail combos for the January 2023 format. I hope you guys enjoyed, because I had the most fun that I've ever had in Yu-Gi-Oh! Making this video for you guys, because I just love this deck, and the fact that that you can still do incredible things like this in 2023, 10 years after Mermails initially released, is just crazy to me. I mean, you can see there in the background, I have the 2023 Worlds Qualifier Mermail mat. Like, this deck is just so near and dear to my heart, so I loved making this, and I am going to give you guys an updated deck profile on Friday as well. But not just that, because the deck does run Small World, which is an incredible card in this deck, I'm going to be making a Small World spreadsheet as well to show you guys all of the different lines and how incredible that can be. I haven't decided if I'm going to throw that in the video or if I'm going to put it on my Patreon. If it is on my Patreon, it will be available at the lowest tier of $1, so maybe consider supporting me there. But you guys know the deal. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, share with your friends. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. I love this deck, and hopefully you guys do too. We will see you later.